Well, welcome to a People's Pundit shorter live stream. Things are a bit crazy. I got to go to Texas this week, so I think we're going to do an Inside the Numbers tomorrow, and then I will be back Thursday, so we'll do another short Thursday, though it will be later in the day. All right, so it's like crazy. I'm just like, I had appointments and everything, and then I just kind of getting myself ready and together here. Plus regular, work to do. But I can't, not miss a stream here because, listen, there is some stuff I want to talk about with the polling. Not a whole lot. I just have to point out that the NBC News poll, clearly very bad news for the DeSantis campaign for two reasons. One, he collapsed. That was a poll that was very bullish. NBC was in the DeSantis bullish category and Trump bearish, meaning, there's a different, you guys know by now. All right. And they were in the DeSantis bullish, not just, kind of a little bit bear on Trump, but actually having DeSantis way higher than the consensus, having Trump lower, consistently lower than the consensus. And I think there's something that everybody needs to know about the NBC News poll, which should be reported and is not being reported. It's jointly conducted by Hart Research, which did research for Hillary Clinton in 2016. It is the poll that I often have, for those of you who have been with me a long time, it is the pollster that I have told the story about this happening, them calling us in Florida and asking to speak to my wife, even though they randomly got me on the phone, which is a big, big no-no. And why did they want to speak to Laura? Because she's younger and she's Hispanic. They did not want the white male in the house that was a prime Trump voter. So they actually asked if they could speak to Laura instead of me, which is, back then, especially considering their methodology, is a big no-no. When Laura told them that she was going to vote for Donald Trump, they made an audible kind of noise on the other end. The call center was highly, highly unprofessional. So that is that story. That's Hart Research, because at the end of it, I'm listening. And as a pollster, I'm going, listen, I want to know who you're polling for. And they refused to give up the organization, but they did say this is Hart Research. All right. So that's one thing. And those of you who have been with me a long time, you know this story. Ooh, coffee from Laura. Hang on one second. Thank you. She knows we're like crazy running around. And she's like wearing Elizabeth Taylor glasses because she has a migraine. I don't mean, hey, you look just as beautiful, more beautiful than Elizabeth Taylor with those glasses. And then it's jointly conducted between Hart Research, Hillary Clinton's pollster, and Public Opinion Strategies, which is Ron DeSantis's pollster. One, along with two, that have consistently shown something. And this is the other thing I want you to know. They have consistently shown, first, Ron DeSantis' position in the primary stronger, but also that he is a stronger candidate, particularly in battleground states, but they did this here in the national poll, when everybody else does not. I mean, if I keep seeing things on Twitter like this is consistent with other legitimate polls, I will put my track record up against any of your track records. I don't know what you are talking about, but when it comes to final polls, you can't even hold a candle to me. So I know that's a dig at people like me and Spencer at Emerson and unbelievably Hillary Clinton's original Bill Clinton's pollster, who now runs the Harvard Harris poll. So, or jointly, is conducted with them. So this is getting a bit insane, all a little bit Orwellian for me to be able to stomach. And then at the bottom line is you should know that. You should know that these polls, I would not work for a campaign and then go to a media organization and get paid, to conduct polling for a media outlet on a race that I am personally involved in. And as we all saw through the PAC polling, which was way outside of the mainstream, then they got picked up by the campaign. That was very clearly the reward for being outside of the mainstream. And Jason Miller really put it well on Twitter. All right. So, and again, that's Mitt Romney's old firm. We heard the Unskew the Polls back in 2012. So there are a lot of Orwellian shit going on, and I frankly can't take it anymore, right? So that's where we're at. Secondly, and you should know that, again, I would not go to work for Donald Trump and then poll for CD Media or the Epoch Times, which we do presidential polling for. I would not poll for the Epoch Times, like a national poll, and then go work for like Trump or Christie or Haley or Scott. That, to me, is a no-go. All right. But apparently, anything's up for grabs these days. All right. So, but I don't want to talk too much more about that. There's something else that's Orwellian. Stop praising. Oh, and before we move to the poll thing, because this is very similarly connected. These same supposed right-wingers who have been trashing these pollsters and media polls for years are now using them to attack other independent pollsters that have actually done a good job and have had a good record over the last two rolling four cycle average, but two last presidential cycles. And frankly, that's disgraceful. All right. But that goes to show you they're showing you their true colors. That's really what it comes down to. All right. We've been through this all through the primary. Karen Taylor Robeson is actually up by a few points. Okay. Dave McCormick surged over the weekend. He's going to beat Oz. All right. We've been through this. All right. So, that being said, there's a couple of things with this Biden stuff. Folks, Ari Fleischer and others in that wing, that very same wing of the Republican Party, you don't live in 2000 anymore. You don't live in 1992 anymore. You don't live in 1988 or 84 anymore. Stop praising the Washington Post and ABC and CBS and MSNBC, even Chuck Todd. They're praising Chuck Todd. Stop praising them for all of a sudden covering the Biden bribery scandal. This evidence has been around for a very long time. They're cutting him loose. Lara Logan is absolutely right. It is not that they suddenly have identified as journalists again, and now they're doing their job. No. They have concluded that they could indict Donald Trump 100 times, and he's still going to beat Joe Biden. So very clearly, there are efforts to get rid of him. Their immediate problem is that Kamala is worse. So give me a break. You know, I mean, this attempt to like ally or, you know, give credit to people who otherwise hate and want to see you destroyed. Anytime they throw you a breadcrumb, are you a dog? They threw you a bone. Are you a dog? Are you going to run over and thank you for the biscuit? It's Christ. Act like a man. Or act like, forget about a man. Act like somebody who has some conviction. You're going to leave little breadcrumbs. Nancy Pelosi and her stooges are going to give you a Politico. You're going to thank them for that. Instead of beating you with a belt 24/7, they just give you a little pop on the ass. You're going to tell them, thank you, ma'am. Can I have another? Pathetic. Otherwise, hate your guts and want to see you dead. Sick federal agencies on you. Want to see you dead or in jail. Sick federal agencies on you. Rig elections against you. But all of a sudden, what? They do their job and you want to give them a freaking award? This is the loser think that people forgot that Republicans have had since Ronald Reagan. Ever since Reagan passed the torch to Bush. They have always been losers. They have always been like that. We just forgot throughout the 4 or 5 years when Trump came on the scene and actually fought. We just forgot what losers they are. And now these same losers want to tell you they're the only ones who could set it right. Unbelievable. I watched these people turn Prigozhin on Friday into like a national hero. This is a guy who doesn't want to de-escalate in Ukraine. He basically leads a bunch of mercenaries, many of whom, like he is, and listen, people reform, but Prigozhin is not reformed. People don't know who Prigozhin is, and I'm going to give you my little take on what I think may have happened. At least possible. I think Barnes is pretty much on to the Most likely scenario, we all know the rumors of missing money. Something happened a little under a year ago. The CIA is apparently, Langley is a shit show today. They told the White House there was going to be mass casualties. They pushed Prigozhin. I wouldn't be surprised if they paid the man. He took their money, and now he's laughing all the way to Belarus, hoping he can keep alive. Anyway, these same people turn this mass murderer who leads battalions of Nazis and criminals and mercenaries and ex-Spetsnaz who are nuts. This is a man, they turned him into a folk hero overnight because he thought he was going to, they thought he was going to do, like in their world, God's work and get rid of Putin for them. And there were even idiots like Goldberg who wrote articles less than 24 hours before there any developments or any truth or facts that he would be better than Vladimir Putin. It's insane. What we know about Prigozhin is that, in fact, he is worse when it comes to aggression. He wanted a less measured response and tactic in Ukraine. And Putin was the one who was rather reserved. I know that sounds crazy, folks, but I hate to tell you, Western media is full of crap. We went from there's a coup, Prigozhin has sided with the West, and he's such a folk hero, to now CNN reporting, are you ready? Prigozhin says he halted the march to avoid bloodshed, but that it really wasn't a coup. It was more like a rebellion. Really? Because on Thursday, the CIA was telling the White House that there would be blood in the streets of Moscow. There would be mass casualties. This was a serious coup. This was a big fight. You know, the CIA is believed to have killed his friend less than a year ago. It's true. A reporter from his filmmaker days. He actually wanted to go further into Ukraine, apparently, to take some CIA ass for that. And Putin wouldn't let him. So think about it. Sure, I'll take your money. Sure, I'll weed your coup. I wouldn't be surprised if we find out that's what happened. All the while doing Putin's bidding, really, and flushing out Western sympathizers. But very clearly, I told everybody on Friday to just wait for the facts. Do not listen to the media. When it comes to this part of the region, there are no good guys. There aren't even any good guys in America anymore. Very few. And certainly none, if very few, one or two, if not none, in Washington, D.C. This is not that kind of region of the world. And everything is very secretive. There is nothing you know for sure, for certain, that can't have an alternate explanation. It is a shadowy part of the world. And the West got played like a fiddle again. We went from that to now. It was just a protest. We've officially achieved a level of complete incoherence when it comes to media reporting, Western media reporting on what happened in Russia. And I told people, just wait. The truth is, we probably won't know a grain of what happened here for months. If Prigozhin ends up dead 6 months from now, when Russia gets a stronger position over Ukraine and this war is over, if he ends up with a bullet in his head, you know that he tried to dance a dance he wasn't equipped to do. If they let him live and he launches some kind of offensive from Belarus, like now the media claims, into Kiev, then you know maybe it was a total ruse. At least the likelihood of it being a total ruse was much higher. I tend to think it's somewhere in the middle, but we don't know. And the breathless speculation. So a commander of criminals and nutcases and, basically mercenaries who wanted escalation. And what I mean by escalation is Prigozhin advocates for more on the total war scale or spectrum when it comes to tactics in Ukraine, where Putin wants to be more selective about where he's attacking, and he does not want widespread civilian casualties, despite what you're reading from Western media. And that is the guy. That is the guy. So I don't understand how you could support Ukraine and somehow twist your logic and rationale into Prigozhin would be better than Putin. It just doesn't matter. This is the danger of relativism. It is, because they're not really dealing with facts and they're not dealing with sound theory. Neoconservatism and neoliberalism are failed political ideologies. They are not legitimate schools of international relations or security studies. Those two are a joke in academia. Yet, sadly, they completely dominate the halls of the State Department, the voices on mainstream media, the Congress, and the at-large foreign policy establishment in the United States. It's why we fail time and time again. You get a realist president, like our former president was a realist president. And Reagan was close to, before Donald Trump, he was the closest you could get to a practicer of realism, but he still believed in a lot of myths. And he believed in what was the predicate of the democratic peace theory through his ABC, anything but communism. And he had neocons surrounding him, although he was not himself a neocon. But they had more authority over his foreign policy than Trump allowed the neolibs and the neocons to have over his. And that's sad, because typically these are the same people who lecture us about how we have to listen to academia and if you're credentialed. It's funny because, years ago, I know because I was bored and I got one. Years ago, I went to the University of Florida, and I decided, this is a cool State Department program. I think I want to do it because I like international relations, and I decided to just go and get one along with a degree. You would never have passed. You're not going to write a thesis on the democratic peace theory. You won't be able to defend it. You'll get destroyed. You may come up with some new theory of constructivism or something like that that would really entertain the panel that you're going to defend your thesis against, but no way in hell are you going to walk up to those guys and ladies, your professors, and hand them a paper about neoconservatism. They will shred your thesis and you will be a joke in academia. But there was always this speaking of a running joke, don't worry. If you can't defend your thesis, you can just go to work at the State Department. There's a really cool certificate that comes along with this degree from them. And sadly, what happens is a lot of those people who subscribe to that crap because they're ideological, they're not thinkers, they're not scholars, they're not statesmen, they don't understand statecraft. That comes second because they can't get past their own worldviews and their own world biases. Sadly, many of them just take that piece of paper and they went and they apply to the Foreign Service. And that's who roams the halls of the State Department right now. Those who largely cannot make it in academia to go against the likes of John Mearsheimer, to go against the likes of Jack Schneider, to go against the likes of others, and even those who are dead, E.H. Carr. They don't have the mind like Ken Waltz, where they can come up with the three images. And defensive realism, which I think is brilliant, but I don't subscribe to it. I'm more of an offensive realist myself. But nevertheless, the guy came up with that when he was like 19. They're not smart people. No joke. Man, the State and War was an expansion of Ken Waltz's thesis. And his wife found all his notes when he was rambling and raving when he was 19 years old. And when he got there, he put it together, and that's what we got, is the man, the State, and War. I bet you Tony Blinken couldn't even understand that book. And yet these are the people running the show. So is there any wonder that we're a waning superpower given all of this? Does it really shock anybody? We are only still a significantly strong regional hegemon in the Western Hemisphere because of the relative weakness of our neighbors. If Mexico got their act together, they have significant narco resources. They could build one hell of an economy and translate that into significant military power. But they're a narco state and they cannot get their act together. No offense, Dave. I love you, brother. You know it, Viv. But your state is filled with a bunch of weenies. You want social services. You don't want to be strong. You're not like the Russians. The Russians would kick your ass. So we're lucky that we're what's called an insular power sandwiched between two idiots who cannot get their act together. Even under the leadership and stewardship of people like Obrador, Mexico they can't put it together. Even though they're huge, they have massive territory, they do have resources. They just can't get it together. Unfortunately, it's a cabal, it's a narco state, and those guys don't like to share. They're not up for the national interest, and that's tragic because they have a lot of money and they could make a very powerful state if they wanted to. And Canada is the quintessential example, it's exemplary of the decline of Western civilization. They will never be strong again until they collapse and fail, which will bring about the end of their demise. They could not live without our financial position in the world. If the leader of the West goes down, all of these weakling countries go with us. And that, I hate to tell you, is... I know, and I mean, I'm telling you, KAG, when the narco state of Mexico is mocking your justice system, you have a serious problem. I mean, do we have to play that again? I'm not going to run that clip, but it was like, minute and a half, you can hear the Mexican president just trashing, or not even trashing, but just laying it out. That the bottom line is that they are prosecuting Trump, and what does that say to the world? It says, don't ever lecture us again. All right, so here we go. We all know the rumors here. Here's CNN. It was a monstrous coup. Prigozhin, parts of CNN. I don't think it would be totally fair to give them all this criticism, but I will tell you, forpatriots.com, TPP10. That was that ad. Don't forget to use the promo code TPP10. All right, so we went from there's a massive coup. This is the worst threat to Putin ever. And by the way, the guy made a phone call and did a public speech and bitched him out. I mean, they act like this weakened Putin or something. This is nuts. And by the way, do you know how difficult it would be to deal with the masses if you took out Vladimir Putin? And Prigozhin is popular, by the way. It does appear that he's got he definitely has support in certain areas of the country. But Putin's approval rating is still about 60%. Nobody has been able to maintain a strong, significantly positive approval rating, whether it's the United States, the leader in the United States, France, it doesn't matter. No Western leader has been able to maintain popularity of this level and nature for as long as Vladimir Putin. Nobody has the staying power with the population. People say, Rich, it's not possible to know that. It is. It is possible to know that. We decided in the last presidential election, we knew they were going to say, that's all fraud. He rigged it. Our approval rating of Vladimir Putin was about the amount of vote that he got. It was like 2-point separation. The panel we use is huge in Russia. Huge. He has pockets of opposition in Moscow. But the problem, and by the way, it resembles elitist kind of opposition like you see against Donald Trump. The difference is there aren't as many in Russia. There aren't as many. In rural Russia, he's massively popular. In this vast swaths of territory in between, he's somewhere in the middle. And there's just not enough opposition in Moscow to hurt him. So don't give me that crap. It's not. The same people who tell me yesterday on Twitter that it's not possible to truly gauge Putin's popularity are 2 months ago or 3 months ago would have been tweeting polls showing Vladimir Zelensky's approval at like 70% in a war-torn country. Zelensky's approval rating was about 29%. before the Ukraine war. That's it. Prigozhin said he halted march to avoid Russian bloodshed in first comments since the short-lived rebellion. And they amended this since then. I was talking to Jack Posobiec about it. Oh, and by the way, on my way back, in order to get this going, I was talking to Jack about it. And by the way, I'll be on Jack 2:30 to 3:30. It's 2:30 to 3, excuse me. By that time, hopefully I'll have a chance to put a suit on. In his first comments since ending a short-lived rebellion, Wagner boss Yevgeny Prigozhin said he called it off to prevent Russian bloodshed and that the rising was a protest rather than an attempt to topple the government. And I can tell you, people in region, when I'm telling you guys, when they don't put something up until they know it, you should go to CD Media or CD.media, which will bring you to creative destruction. Todd Wood knows the region. He's got reporters in the region. He knew this was coming. The CIA knew it was coming. Vladimir Putin knew it was coming. And apparently there was old KGB style being this time conducted by the FSB. There were, in fact, in the days preceding this movement on Friday, doors kicked in of high-ranking Wagner group officers. So what happened to Prigozhin is that we had heard a lot of this appeared to be rank and file, and that many of the high-ranking people in PMC did not join in on this, and that the defense ministry was not filled with a bunch. Well, there's obviously Prigozhin has support in the defense ministry, he does, but it wasn't the support that he initially gauged, and that the FSB, because, you know, folks, you're going to give up on the coup real quick if they got your wife and children, you know, so apparently that happened. All right. But so now you got to remember, when these people talk, you cannot take what they're saying at total face value. You just can't do it. In the very beginning, before Putin's speech, he had said off the, you know, right off the top from the jump, that this was against the defense ministry, not Putin. It was only until Putin gave that speech, which he had no choice to give. Of course he had to give that speech. That's when he said, there'll be a new president, but then there wasn't, right? So it's a protest. Seizing government buildings in Rostov is a protest. The purpose of the march was to prevent the destruction of PMC Wagner and to bring to justice those who, through their unprofessional actions, made a huge number of mistakes during the military operation, Prigozhin said in an audio message referring to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. On Saturday, troops from his private military group seized control of a military base and moved in convoy toward Russia's capital on Saturday, a remarkable and unexpected challenge to Russian President Vladimir Putin. For those who were saying that Putin could not repel this if he wanted to, I would urge you to go to NATO's latest figures and look at the amount of reserves and regulars that Russia has in country still. And the latest on their recruitment efforts, which is literally, if you drum it down, thousands a day. He would have met an incredible amount of resistance, and he doesn't have any air power. From the air, you could do amazing damage to a 5-kilometer convoy like Wagner, even of tanks and whatever else they have. The march was suddenly called off when a supposed deal was struck that would see Prigozhin move to Belarus, which is essentially exile. At least that's what most people think it is that actually know what they're talking about. And we'll see. We don't know. Again, folks, if he winds up, being in charge of his men, after all, his entire men, which is not going to happen now, but apparently, if it winds up that he is, then that's a different story. And then, we have to explore the possibility that this was all a ruse, or at least most of it was. But at this point, I think he basically tried to play both sides of the fence, and it didn't work out as expected for him. The FSB kicked in the doors of his top commanders, and, they bounced on him, and he found himself in a weaker position than he thought he was in. We don't know. But if he ends up with a bullet in his head 6 months from now, then we'll know. The move towards Moscow marked a drastic escalation of Prigozhin's long-running feud with Russia's defense ministry, whom he claimed Monday had planned for Wagner to cease to exist from July 1st. It's also important to note, which I've only heard Robert Barnes note. Who is Prigozhin? He is not old money Russian oligarchy. Everything he has, he basically owes to Vladimir Putin and Vladimir Putin's Russia. I think he was 20 years old when he was locked up by the Soviets for, he was a criminal. He was a street thug. And that's, fine. I'm not going to judge the guy. Nobody knows his life and his experience. He was doing what I'm sure he was doing what he thought he had to do to get a slice of pie in this world. But anyway, he gets locked up for about 6 years, I believe, until the Soviets collapse. And then he's released. He dips his hand in filmmaking. He's really good, apparently, has a knack for it. And then ends up a new era oligarch. He's a gangster. He ends up a new era gangster oligarch under the tutelage of Vladimir Putin. The move towards Moscow marked a dramatic escalation, blah, blah, blah. Overnight, we have walked 780 kilometers, 480 miles, 200 and something kilometers, 125 miles were left to Moscow, Prigozhin claimed in his Monday message, despite no evidence of his Wagner forces made it that close to the Russian capital. There is no evidence of that. Not a single soldier on the ground was killed, Prigozhin added. We regret that we were forced to strike on aircraft, he said, but these aircraft dropped bombs and launched missile strikes. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, quote, extended his hand, unquote, and offered to find solutions to further the work of the Wagner Group in a legal way, Prigozhin said, mirroring the line that Minsk and the Kremlin had communicated about why the march, which for several hours appeared to be an armed insurrection on the Russian state, suddenly ended. The future role of Prigozhin or his Wagner Group remains unclear. The unit has been increasingly essential to Russia's war effort in Ukraine, but whether it will continue to exist in any meaningful capacity is uncertain. The investigation into the criminal case involving Prigozhin and his alleged involvement in organizing an armed mutiny is still active, Russian state news agency TASS said Monday, citing a source close to the prosecutor general's office. Originally, people had said that the charges would be dropped, which is what they say next. And I will just say this, folks, if this was a full-on coup in which he just decided to turn around and go home, Vladimir Putin will not and would not leave him alive. There would have been a lot more resistance too, by the way, but they would not leave him alive. No chance. On Saturday, the Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, had told journalists a deal had been struck with Prigozhin and the charges against him for calling for an armed rebellion would be dropped without providing a time frame. Quote, we stopped at the moment when the detachment, which had approached Moscow, deployed its artillery, made a reconnaissance of the area, and it was obvious that at that moment a lot of blood would be shed. We felt that demonstrating what we were going to do was sufficient, Prigozhin said Monday. I will say this, Putin's speech, and again, I know a lot of people in the West don't really understand this. Putin's speech struck the right tone. If you are a Russian, you would have looked at Prigozhin a lot differently, even though they're the hero. Wagner is the hero of Bakhmut. They're the heroes of Bakhmut. It does appear they have a lot of support with the Russian people, although that's not been scientifically tested or polled, but it's, I don't think that's really in dispute. However, Putin, who is very popular, comes out and says, we need to be unified. The West wants to see this. And you have stabbed us in the back. You have stabbed the Russian people in the back, just like, and guess who we compared him to? The Bolsheviks in 1917. Folks, you really do need to follow Eastern European media on your own without the filter of the West. And then you will get a much better understanding. Not total understanding, but a much better one. That is a political death knell. The alternatives to Vladimir Putin are essentially nutcases like Prigozhin, warlords who want more war, or what remains of communism. That's the alternative to Vladimir Putin. The Russian people are not stupid, contrary to what Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal want you to think. They have no reason, by the way, to strike a nuclear power plant. If that plant goes down, it's the CIA. I'm telling you right now. See, if that power plant is attacked, you should just knee-jerk believe that it was CIA, not FSB or Russian military or anything like that. They have no legitimate reason to ally the world against them. Russian President Putin has not spoken about the event since the televised address on Saturday, in which he threatened severe punishments against those conducting what he called an armed rebellion. A pre-recorded video of Putin addressing the International Youth Industrial Forum from behind a nondescript desk flanked by Russian flags was released by the Kremlin on Monday, but there was no information about when or where the clip was filmed. In the short video, Putin makes no mention of the events of the past weekend, focusing instead on the forum. Prigozhin had previously accused Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, I always mess him up, and Russia's top general Valery I hate these names, no offense, Gerasimov, of not giving his forces ammunition and was critical of their handling of the conflict, but he always defended the reasoning for the military campaign and steered clear of criticizing Putin himself. And by the way, that's another thing. He may hate Shoigu, but he needs him for ammunition. But he crossed these red lines over the weekend. Late on Friday, Prigozhin accused Russian military leadership of killing his fighters during a strike on the Wagner camp, which the Russian Defense Ministry has denied. He also said Moscow invaded Ukraine under false pretenses devised by the Russian Ministry of Defense and that Russia is actually losing ground on the battlefield. It sounds like, again, this is all very weird. He has no military experience. You have to understand this. He's not some kind of like strategic genius. He's not a battlefield genius. He's not a military guru. So that being said, you really don't need to be to know just like where's the gray zone been this whole time. The Ukrainians, you can see now, attempting to deal with the possibility that there can be something launched now from Belarus on Kiev. Are mounting what little bit they have of preparing to mount what little bit they can of a defense, and it's a puny effort. They're in the final stages of being bled out. So, I mean, some of these statements he's making just don't make sense, and everybody knows it. So you're thinking, is this a Western thing? Did he take, that money that we all know is all of a sudden unaccounted for? Did he take that money? Maybe, to get back at CIA for blowing up his friend and then reneged and screwed over CIA, trying to play it as close as he could with Putin. I don't know. He's a storyteller. He's a story creator. So don't be so shocked if it really winds up being something like that. When we were told that we were at war with Ukraine, we went and fought. But it turned out that ammunition, weapons, all the money that was allocated is being stolen. And the bureaucrats are sitting idly, saving it for themselves, just for the occasion that happened today, when someone is marching to Moscow, Prigozhin said. What followed was a remarkable 24-hour confrontation that seemingly weakened Putin's reputation and sowed further discord and infighting in Russia's military ranks. I don't think it weakened Putin at all. Not until we have more evidence that that is the case. Because as of this moment, Putin is still in power. Putin is still beloved by the Russian people. And Putin still has allies that control all the ammunition. So I really don't know. I really don't know where this is coming from. I just don't. Okay, we'll have to check out that new Substack. I see it. Yeah. There's no doubt. That's off topic a little bit, but yeah, there's no doubt that Kevin McCarthy is playing the fence. Listen, Richard Spencer doesn't give to anybody without Kevin McCarthy's okay. So holding that fundraiser for Ron DeSantis is absolutely an indication that Kevin McCarthy is playing games behind Donald Trump's back. Not even playing games. I mean, I know for a fact. I mean, Tom McClintock already endorsed Ron DeSantis, and he had told a donor who I know, and that they were not going to be supporting Trump this time. That they were going to be looking for somebody new, and that they wanted Ron DeSantis. So despite all that attempts by Trump to make nice, because I know he didn't want the same situation he had with Paul Ryan as he has with Kevin McCarthy, McCarthy backed his bid, literally gave him the phone call that got him the last vote to become speaker with a 1-vote majority. At the end of the day, this idea you remain neutral in the face of that is bullshit, and you would only do what you're doing if you intended to not support that person who helped you like that. All right, so I mean, I just don't buy it at all. I think he's allowing these things to happen because he supports Ron DeSantis behind Trump's back. I mean, that's what I believe. That's what I believe. That's just played behind me. And I think the evidence obviously backs me up on that. All right. So, yeah. So, I mean, listen to where we are now as of where we started and where we went all through the Friday, all through Saturday. This was just borderline nutcase coverage of this, borderline nutcase coverage. This was not handled very well. And at least if you can learn anything from this, guys, it's that you cannot listen to Western media when events happen in this region of the world. It doesn't matter whether it's immediate, it's just breaking, you got to wait for it, or whether it hatches out for 24 hours, 48 hours. The truth is we still don't know much. The only thing we do know is that the breathless speculation and takes by the punditry class and corporate media were not correct. They were not accurate. Yeah, I know that. I see that is trending on Twitter. Listen, there are Nazis in Ukraine. Of course there are. I can't even believe we're having this conversation still. I don't know. It's 6.2 billion. Okay. They are saying, and we've known about this for about a week, and there have been legislative aides who have been trying to go through it. The Pentagon is basically, there's over $6 billion that's unaccounted for. And the Pentagon's telling Congress that it must have went to Ukraine on accident. And there are some people who say they have no confirmation from the other side of that transaction that is actually the case. We don't know yet. It's a huge, convoluted budget. We don't know. So that led to speculation. Did that at least part of that $6 billion go to Prigozhin? Did Langley funnel that to Prigozhin and then tell the White House, we know that this is coming, obviously, because they put it in motion. And then Prigozhin just said, up yours, you killed my friend, and I'm taking your money, and I'm not doing anything. I mean, that could have happened. They blew him up with a gift. Hand delivered. Well, he was sitting having a cup of coffee. I'm not kidding. Let's see. Some of the absolute, unbelievably ridiculous, takes are just unbelievable. Oh, last thing I want to say is with this Richard Blumenthal and Lindsey Graham joint resolution, what it says is, and if Russia attacks a power plant, it invokes the article in NATO that requires you to come to the defense of an ally. Okay. Again, like I said, there's absolutely no reason for Russia to attack that nuclear power plant. What they want you to think is that there are some people loyal to Prigozhin who have taken that power plant and that Russia is going to destroy it in order to not have that held over their head. All right. That's crazy. It's just, it's crazy. I mean, it's really out there. These people accuse others of conspiracy theories and they make this shit up like it's nothing. When it comes to this is something I want you guys to understand and think about for a second. The people who are telling you that we need to invoke this resolution were telling you 6 months ago that there is no threat of nuclear intervention in this war at all. All right. So Putin, it's not coherent. It all contradicts itself. All right. So what do I mean by that? Just think about their positions. There's no threat of a nuclear intervention, but now I am introducing a resolution that if Russia does anything, and it's not even a nuclear strike, it's just if Russia does anything with nuclear interventions or attacks a nuclear power plant, we're invoking Article 5. How could you can't reconcile these things. Those same people were saying that Russia is weak and Ukraine is strong, right? Now, also want to tell you that Ukraine needs more because the Russians have beaten them in parts of, but they can still win, just struggle. Nothing they say makes sense. Nothing they say is consistent because they that's what they do. They change they're not facts on the ground, but they change the so-called facts of the situation to suit their needs. What is known and what is believed is forever in flux to meet the needs of the state and to meet the needs of their own argument. It's one myth after the other, and then they can reverse those myths in next week and pretend like nothing they said contradicts itself. It's unbelievable. But this is what they do. They're nuts, Steve. Nuts. And that's what is very important for you guys to understand. Neoconservatism and neoliberalism are not real international relations, statecrafts, security studies, whatever, schools of thought. They are ideologies. That's why. There is nothing concrete. There is no founding or standing principles of the worldview. And you can change it on a whim. There's no consistent belief system. And they can be hypocritical. That's not how statecraft works. It's just not. It's crazy. It's like, yeah, whatever serves their narrative, spy. Whatever serves their narrative. I mean, if they claim, that Putin is purple one day because it fits their narrative and it suits them, for that day. That the next week they can tell you that Putin is orange and never said that Putin was purple. It just doesn't matter. Whatever suits their need for the time. And Norm, they're going to blame OceanGate on the Russians too. They blame everything on the Russians. And that's the thing. Have they thought this really through? When if and when they were, let's say they were to get rid of Vladimir Putin and their regime change tactic has worked. Have they thought about who they're going to use as a scapegoat after that? Who they're going to blame all this shit on? Who they're going to blame all their failures on with NATO? Who are they going to blame? Someone's going to take that blame. NATO members, you may think about that long and hard before we move forward here. Trump. I'm laughing, but you honestly never know. You honestly never know. All right. I do got Jack here real soon, but there is one more thing I wanted to read to you guys. All right. But before we do, let's get into this. Let me take a real quick break. All right. Well, wait a minute. Wait a second. Yeah, I already read that to you. Let's take a quick break, shall we? And we'll do a little bit on the primary news when we come back. All right. All right, folks. Experts, authorities fear the U.S. power grid is being targeted by extremists. That's according to Time magazine. Look at how incompetent these people are. Forget about the extremists. Look at how incompetent they are. It's just 9 key substations were to go down. It would knock out power for months across the country. Our lives would be frozen in time at the moment, or most of our lives would be frozen in time at the moment power went out. That's why you need a solar generator. The Patriot Power Generator 2000X is solar, it's portable, but it's powerful enough for medical devices, even your refrigerator. And that's why you should go to 4patriots.com right now and grab one for 10% off using the promo code TPP10 at checkout. Again, 4patriots, the number 4, patriots.com. Use the promo code TPP10 at checkout to knock 10% off today. That code is for your first purchase only, but that's why you should make it count. Make 10% count, like picking up the Patriot Power Generator today. All right. And before we move on, let me just tell you, of course, about our friends at Jam and Bean. Great deal. They're still running at least until the end of this month, which is coming up on us. I will contact them and see what the plan is moving forward. But right now, if you use the promo code TPP40 at checkout, when you sign up for a new subscription to their delicious coffee, that's Patriot-owned, folks, but roasting coffee is a gift. And if you're a coffee aficionado or you're a little bit of a connoisseur, like I am, then you know it when you taste it. And these guys are fantastic. And Patriot-owned, Michigan, located, Patriot-owned. Go to Jam and Bean, JAMN, bean.com. And when you sign up for a new subscription, whether it's K-Cups or freshly roasted, whatever it is that you prefer, or both, you will get 40% off that initial subscription, and yet you'll still get the 10% every renewal each month, just for being a viewer of the People's Pundit, local, shorter live streams, Inside the Numbers, whatever. Again, jamandbean.com, TPP40 at checkout, and send us your feedback. We love to read it. And apparently a lot of you guys also, you've gotten, whoops, and I didn't even have it up there. That's what happens when Laura's not with you. We got a lot of feedback. They've gotten a lot of feedback. I know they've done incredible customer service, which we've heard about from you guys. And the gourmet popcorn is to die for. Sour cream and chives. Everything's natural. It's delicious. By the way, apple pie is awesome. White cheddar, awesome. The sour cream and chive, it's all so good. They have so much creamy dill. I tried the dill in front of you guys. I got to grab me some creamy dill. Cheese, savory, it's all delicious. You can't go wrong with any of it. Their caramel corn is, it's got to be the best gourmet caramel corn I've ever had. There's a rich butter aftertaste with the caramel that I just love. The Buffalo blue cheese, big hit with me and the kids. I love Buffalo. But whatever, again, it doesn't matter if it's popcorn, coffee, sign up for a new subscription, TPP40 at checkout. All right, that's jamandbean.com. All right, so there's something I want to read here, not as a dig on the DeSantis campaign or anything, but there is a pattern that I would like to show, because very clearly a pattern has emerged with this campaign. All right. So, I mean, they're going to have to address this if they feel they have any prayer at all. And so a couple of people now have started to openly tell me that now they see what I've been saying, which is that the plan appears to just attack Trump supporters and then beg for their support after they get rid of Trump on the ballot, if they can possibly swing that. And that is really starting to bother them. Anytime you point out, something they could do better or criticize them in any way, it's not like it was with MAGA when they, attacked people for really defending Trump. It's not the same, and there's no course correction. There's just this is like, to get everybody to hate you is a smart campaign strategy. Anyway, something happened. I've told you this before. One of the major problems DeSantis is going to have in Iowa and in New Hampshire specifically is that these folks want to see you up close and personal. You have to win their trust. They want to see you on numerous occasions, and they want to be treated with a certain level of favoritism. That's the way voters are in Iowa and in New Hampshire. They say, I want to see you up close. I want to know who you are. And Ron DeSantis is not a great retail campaigner. Let's be straight with it. He's awkward. A lot of people that I talk to say doesn't even feel like he wants to run for president. Doesn't feel like he wants to. Why do I feel like his wife wants him to be president more than he wants to be president? She has more fire on the stump. Or at least fire anyway. I wouldn't say that it's likability. She's got a lot of work to do, despite the fact that they have done a lot of work. Did all sorts of lessons here and there about this and that. But so far, it has not improved how he appears when he's face to face in these retail situations. All right. Then there's the snubbing. The lack of personal relationships with different people is why Donald Trump is crushing him in the endorsement race. Trump took more than half of the delegation in Pennsylvania last week. On Friday, he took almost all of the delegation in the governor's own state. Congressmen and women we spoke to said they didn't hear from Ron DeSantis until they heard news that that Trump was going to get all their endorsements. And all of a sudden, people came out of the woodwork and returned their calls. He would go in their areas, never ask to talk with them, never asked to meet with them. He just didn't have that personal touch. And frankly, they found him to be a little bit offensive. Like he was arrogant. And that's why, when Trump said sanctimonious, I didn't get it, at least not fully. A lot of people didn't get it. Now I know why he picked that. All right. So, and really nicknames do best when they affirm things that you already suspect of people. All right. It's just stupid. DeSantis stumbles in New Hampshire. It once looked like Ron DeSantis might be poised for a breakthrough in New Hampshire. Not anymore. For several months this year, Ron DeSantis seemed poised for a breakthrough in New Hampshire. I don't know where they got that from. One poll, really. Longtime allies of his chief opponent, Donald Trump, were shopping around for alternatives. For me, it was always about demographics. I just want to tell you that. All right. So multiple efforts sprang up to draft DeSantis into the race. The Florida governor topped Trump in one New Hampshire poll in January, and he sold out the state's GOP's biggest annual fundraising dinner in April, helping the party bring in a record haul. One poll. And they went apeshit over. But in the months since DeSantis formally entered the race, he stumbled in the first in the nation primary state. He got dragged into a tit-for-tat endorsement battle with Trump that generated some media attention, but little measurable increase in support. And not only that, it was embarrassing. Two people who actually endorsed DeSantis rescinded their endorsement and went to Trump. Trump baited him into it. And then it was very, very, somebody calls him an amateur in the team. They say they're amateurs. Folks, what they did with the announcement was amateur hour. And they literally scared people out of their endorsement category. And they went to Trump. You never overpromise and underperform. You underperform and you underpromise and overperform. Don't hype something when you can't deliver. And hyping that announcement was folks, amateur's the nice word. This was incompetence. Not even second tier level kind of stupidity. Anyway, his first visit to the state as a presidential candidate drew more headlines for what he didn't do, take questions from voters, than the retail politicking he did. And that's on top of the polls that had already swung back in Trump's favor. Not all polls ever swung in his favor in New Hampshire. That's number one. I will say this. Remember, we went over the Washington Post shadowing Trump and DeSantis when Trump went to New Hampshire and went to Iowa, and then DeSantis went to Iowa and New Hampshire. And Trump also, by the way, went to East Palestine. And the Washington Post, we went over this article, had said, this guy don't even talk to voters. He hides. And he's weird. It's weird. Where Trump is really personal and there is a real connection that you can see. Trump is going to beat him because of this personal connection. We went over this article and I said, this is a major problem that DeSantis has to address. And instead of them addressing it, they just attacked me for saying it. There are signs that even inside DeSantis' orbit, they see New Hampshire as a challenge. Everyone knows they do. They've staked their claim in Iowa. The super PAC that effectively is running his operation has been off the air in New Hampshire since May. Temporarily, its founder told Politico, while running a new ad in Iowa and South Carolina this week. And DeSantis' visit to the state Tuesday is being met with backlash from a major Republican women's group. I'm actually going to defend DeSantis here. The New Hampshire Federation of Republican Women released a statement Thursday slamming DeSantis for planning an event at the same time as their annual fundraising lunch, an event Trump is headlining. The group asked him to reschedule. I just have to say this before we get into it. This is an honest mistake. But then them jumping on DeSantis for it was harsh. However, this is the problem with the DeSantis campaign. Once you make that mistake, you course correct. Instead, they basically told this group, which is the most important group in the damn state, to shut the hell up. That's what they told him. Shut up, stop whining. We didn't mean it. Get over it. We're still holding our event. And two members of the group, because they have a history of neutrality. So them speaking up led to, the Cuccinellis to make calls and get those people in trouble, because their image of being impartial is something they're proud of. And, the bottom line is, though, this is what I'm talking about. You don't schedule an event when, in this case, their event's going on. Trump is headlining it. Trump is going to speak at it. They felt slighted that Trump was the headliner, so they decided to try to hold an event somewhere else, which was not a smart choice, location and geographically speaking. And Trump is in Concord to give this big speech. Again, it is probably the most important activist group in the state, okay? And you don't do it conflicting schedules. It's not a huge deal. It's how the DeSantis campaign handled it, again, how they reacted. And then the fact of the matter is, it's amateur hour that they didn't know this to begin with. It has always been a New Hampshire hallmark to be considerate when scheduling events. The group's events director, Christine Peters, said in a statement, to have a candidate come in and distract from the most special event the women's group holds in the year is unprecedented. It is. DeSantis' world was quick to dismiss the group's complaints, saying their event shouldn't be a distraction since it's in a different part of the state and at a different time than when Trump is speaking. This is a statewide event. People come to Concord from everywhere. People pay attention to it. It is a big deal. And that the Federation soiree is already sold out. They noted that two of the group's primary members resigned over the statement targeting DeSantis, with the pack blasting out their tweets. One of them, Kate Day, the now former public relations chair, told Politico the Federation erred when it broke its neutrality in criticizing DeSantis. That's really what it came down to. They wanted their image of neutrality to be preserved, but the feelings were widespread, just not public. Okay? DeSantis' opponents were already weaponizing the exchange. If there's one thing you don't do in New Hampshire, it's piss off the grassroots women, said an advisor to a rival candidate granted anonymity to speak freely. Don't mess with them. They remember everything. Rookie move. Rookie. Good. It is a rookie move. I keep saying amateur, I'm being nice, but that's another way to say it. It's a rookie move. Out of the 4 early voting states, libertarian-leaning New Hampshire was never the most logical fit for the conservative, culture war-wielding Florida governor. There's many, many false statements in this article coming as of now, which I will point out as we go. No, New Hampshire was never a good fit, but it's not because that Ron DeSantis is the most conservative in the race. That's a load of crap. Can we get real? First of all, the most conservative people nationally and in the polls support Trump, and he also wins the moderate. There's like a somewhat conservative group that DeSantis has some support with. He's got some support, of course, with very conservative statistics, but he's not winning them. He's losing them badly. And he's also losing moderates. So he's losing every lane. So it's like this idea is a little bit ridiculous. The reason why it was never a good fit for him is because it's working class like hell. All right. He tacitly acknowledged as much by removing any reference to the 6-week abortion ban he signed in Florida from his stump speech in a state where the majority of voters identify as pro-choice. But as the leading contender against Trump nationally, expectations for DeSantis remain sky high, even in New Hampshire. And some Republicans in the state were dumbfounded that DeSantis would walk into a skirmish with a prominent GOP group. Not only that, we've talked about this before with the exception of Florida. Trump's lead with women is what is making him so insurmountable right now. DeSantis's inroads largely have come with educated men, Republican men, more moderate, educated Republican men. Not the conservative roots, not the females, even educated, not female voters. It's the worst strategic move he has exhibited thus far. New Hampshire-based Republican strategist Mike Dennehy said, "It's just stupid, actually. You don't take on the New Hampshire Federation of Republican Women." Again, so you say you're sorry, and you say, of course I'll reschedule. I'll go back to Iowa that day. I'll go to South Carolina that day. I'll go somewhere else. You don't get into a fight with them. This is the problem. It's another affirmation of what people say about him behind the scenes and his team behind the scenes. They are arrogant. They have a sense of entitlement, and they don't seem to care for other people's concerns when it conflicts with their own. This is something everybody knows, folks. Like, I am up here and you are down here. Everybody knows that. I'm not sure anyone put it better than congressmen and women from his own state. Greg Stubbe's a great example. He added, if he doesn't turn it around, it could be a death by 1,000 cuts. DeSantis stumbles may say as much about Trump's strength in New Hampshire as they do about the governor's own shortcomings. The state handed Trump his first primary win in 2016, and he remains widely popular among the conservative electorate there. It's a problem vexing every candidate running for the GOP nomination. But as the closest competitor, there is additional pressure on DeSantis to perform. By the way, South Carolina is no longer as conservative as Iowa. So they go on to say that South Carolina is a better fit. It is no longer as conservative as the Iowa caucuses. That is over. They are different electorates and even different kinds of conservatives. What it means to be conservative in Iowa is different than what it means to be conservative in South Carolina. Politico doesn't seem to understand that anymore. And by the way, there's several comments from the DeSantis campaign. They don't appear to understand it either. His team also has his eyes on Nevada, where he recently headlined an annual event alongside one of the top supporters and personal friends, former Attorney General Adam Laxalt, the loser from 2022. Nevada is going to be more non-white than it's ever been, and Trump crushed Rubio there by beating him among Hispanics. If the lawsuit from Republicans does not go through, they will have to deal with a primary, and they will not be able to rig a caucus against Donald Trump. The state passed a new law signed by the governor before Sisolak that now the state conducts primaries. It will lead to higher Hispanic participation in the state of Nevada, and that will be it. They can put their eye on it all they want, but Nevada is not a good fit for Ron DeSantis. So I know it's 2:15, and I got a boogie here. The bottom line is, let me go down. Another issue for the DeSantis in the Granite State is Chris Christie, who is about to, at least according to one poll, is nipping on his heels, threatening to overtake him. Absolutely. Where else? Sununu, they talk about his endorsement. His endorsement is not worth more than 6 points. The endorsement, and by the way, that's generous. Endorsements don't matter unless the endorsement is Donald Trump. Not even Obama had the endorsement power that Donald Trump has. It's a weird phenomenon. All right, Trump's the guy to beat, but he can be beat. One of DeSantis' people who claims not to be one says. And then again, here's a perfect example. Fergus Cullen, the former New Hampshire GOP chair. He's a never Trumper. He tried to not only stop Trump in 2016, but they mounted a challenge against him in 2020. The Granite State is the place to mount a challenge against an incumbent president if you don't like them. And their share of the vote is a gauge of how strong they are with the base. And Donald Trump went on to beat Ronald Reagan's record in vote share and then beat total as well for an incumbent president receiving the most number of votes. So Cullen looked like a fool. And so did the few that mounted that challenge. And he said, it's not uncommon for candidates to have competing events. Of course it's not. But that's not supposed to be seen as a campaign event for one candidate. That is an impartial group that has a long tradition of hosting these people in different areas at different times, and that they get all the focus on them when they do it. That's the tradition of these early states. And in New Hampshire, the Federation of Women, again, you just say you're sorry, and that's it. You do not F with these women. It's just this mindset. Again, a guy will do what I want to do, and I don't really care about personal relationships. And it's just no idea. I mean, it's unbelievable. They don't understand how big New England states are. They don't get it, Dan. I mean, they don't get it. Well, I'm going to have to rock and roll here because I got to go on Jack. But ta-da! Yeah, I got changed when that was up, when I was talking. Again, we're going to go with some of these shorts this week because of the traveling and the preparing and the everything that's going on. And then, of course, I'll try to bust some stuff out with you guys while I'm in Texas. But we're going to go with these shorts tomorrow. I fully intend to do one at the regularly scheduled time. If something happens, I'll let you know. But everyone should tune in to Human Events right now with Jack. And I will see you over there. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Sorry about it being late. Tried to give a little bit more time than I expected to give. And I'll see you tomorrow. All the best. All the best. Damn.